welcome back everyone to shopblackbusiness.com. I am Gwen Williams-Dandridge. Before we went to the break, we were talking to Irvin Clark, who is the president and CEO of Urban Views Weekly, and he was telling us about this new concept, shopblackbusiness.com. We told you we'd be joined by Jack Gravely of WLEE, the Jack Gravely Show, former state director of the NAACP talk show. And you're all over the place, and so we know that you're going to bring a lot of wisdom to this conversation. So thank you so much for being here, Mr. Gravely.
Well, please call me Jack. My pleasure, Gwen. It's a pleasure seeing you again, and Mr. Clark, thank you very much for having me on your program. Business is very important. Black folk achieved a degree of political autonomy and power during the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But political power without economic power is like having a ship without a sail, having a ship without a motor. It's very important that black folk understand that economics is the base of a good community as the church. It's a three-pronged thing. It's the church, it's the family, and it's the businesses out there, an educational community. It's very important that we build and shop and be a part of each other's community, because when you spend dollars in the black community, that dollars help sustain the black community. There have been studies that show how dollars leave the black community after they've been spent or turn over 1 or 2 times. In Asian communities and other communities, that dollar turns over 6, 7, 8 times in that community. Economically, no one can survive in America without the dollar. Money is the mother's milk of progress in America. The church is important, schools are important, the political arena is important, but business is also important, and you have to shop where you live. You have to keep the money in your community. That's not being anti-anybody, that's not being racist, that's not being anything other than being smart.
Now, when you talked about how many times money turns over in some of the other communities and how that is not happening in the African American community, Irvin and I were talking earlier, why do you think this concept is somehow lost on the black community? Why is it that it seems that the concept of this being a win-win really is lost?
I think part of it, and this is to be as respectful as I can be, I think to some degree black folk have gotten comfortable with depending on other people. I think black folk have gotten comfortable with accepting other folk having means of production. What is it that you can't build your community just like other folk can? I think it is like that because historically, black folk have not been entrepreneurs. We were always given things. Slavery, we were given a place to work, a place to eat. And when you start talking to people that come from other countries, I was at an Asian conference out in Henrico County last year, and one of the Asian guys told me the reason why Asians are entrepreneurs is that where they came from, if they didn't make a living or business for themselves, they starved. And so I think it's very important that we understand that business and doing business with one another is very, very important, and it builds a community. Not only does it build a community, it builds respect. I don't think people respect people that can't take care of themselves and provide for themselves. And there's nothing anti about that. The third thing is that black folk are big on church and the gospel. Read the book of Solomon. Read about King Solomon. What did King Solomon ask of God? He asked for wisdom and knowledge. He didn't ask for a car. He didn't ask for money. And we have the wisdom and knowledge in our community. We have to use it. And I don't think that we use it as well as we could. We use it a lot. I think we're a lot better. But we have to understand that there is nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with being productive, and there's nothing wrong with making money in the community. And I think we have to just sort of just have that to seep into our brain and use it and go forward.
And I think it's important that you point out that we're not necessarily saying here, don't do business otherwise, that these motives are not dishonorable, that we're basically saying that it's okay to spend money in our own community to keep our community thriving.
If I had to make one suggestion and leave one point with the people that's listening to this program this evening or whenever it's going to air, go Google a man, Claude Anderson. Go Google Mr. Claude Anderson, a black entrepreneur, Baltimore. He's written a book. He talked about black entrepreneur and business things. Listen to what he talks about. Look at Black Enterprise founder and other folk in America. Look at what Oprah Winfrey did. You have to have that dream and you have to push it, and you can't let anyone else deter you from it other folk don't ask our permission to do what they want to do in their community, we should not ask anyone else permission to do what we have to do in our community.
So if we talk about this concept of shopblackbusiness.com, basically a clearinghouse where we can put all of these businesses for other people to go, or for African Americans to go and see where there are businesses that we can patronize, that are people who look like us who own those businesses. Is this a good concept? Will this work?
Yes, it will work. It's worked for other folk, and it's worked in certain segments in the African American community. I think in the clothing industry and in the music industry, those hip hop and rap artists that own their own studios, produce their own product, distribute their own product, the Jay-Z's of the world is no accident. The P. Diddy's are no accident. These young men said, I'm going to own me, I'm going to produce me, I'm going to distribute me, and I think it's very, very important. You can do that in other means and other things within the African American community. We just have to commit ourselves to that and stop trying to be what other folk want us to be.
So economically, though, let's just talk, we have just a few minutes left. Let's talk about how this will help us economically as a community.
If you keep money in the community, then I'm able to hire mechanics. You keep money in the community, I'm able to buy in the community. You keep money in the community, I'm able to hire painters, electricians, and architects, and designers, and lawyers. You keep money in the community, that corner store can be ours. You keep money in the community, that strip mall can be ours. The clubs, the restaurants, the businesses, the office building. Money is the mother's milk of economic advancement of anybody in the country. Don't tell me that a man or a woman who grew up and never been on an elevator or an escalator, don't have a college degree, can get on a boat or a plane and come to America and in 10 years do what you haven't done, and you were born here and you've been living here and you educated here. No, you just don't get me started. Don't get me started.
Well, we can't get you started because we don't have enough time. But just very quickly before we go to the break, I just wanted to point out that we're not talking about just a little bit of money here. If we look at the buying power of African Americans just in the Richmond market, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, we were talking about $15.5 billion of black buying power just here in the metro Richmond area.
And let's spread that around the world. If black America was an independent country, we would be somewhere like the 7th or the 9th largest country in the world. Or we would have the 7th largest economy in the world. We would have economy bigger than Portugal, bigger than Spain, would rival Germany if we were an independent country. And don't tell me that people with that kind of economic power are poor. Then you think poor, you walk poor, you talk poor, but you're not poor.
But not poor.
Not poor at all.
By any means. Mr. Gravely, thank you so much for joining us here. We know that with your wisdom, we really could have dedicated the entire 30 minutes, but perhaps we'll have an opportunity to have you back.
Thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to looking at this program.
All right.
Thank you.
Don't forget that along the bottom of your screen, we've been running the names of many black-owned businesses right here in the area. If you have an opportunity, we would ask that you do business with those businesses. You may also go to shopblackbusiness.com for a list of those businesses and more information about how you can become a part of this very exciting program. We'll be right back. Stay with us.